Last time on Kipper Tales, we travelled to Swansea in South Wales to look at a Westerly Seahawk 35 and took you along with us for an in-depth boat viewing. Let's head on down the companionway and see what we find. Just looking, and you can see it's bags of headroom, and we got to have a fantastic sail on board Double T out in Swansea Bay and dipped our toes into the Bristol Channel. Coming up in this episode, as our boat shopping continues, we take a look at a Westerly Seahawk 34. And we take a close look at a Westerly Discus 33 bilge keeler. And we get to share some news about a previous boat we've been to see. Remember Pete's Dragon, the Southerly 115? Well, you wouldn't recognise her now. Or a happy new owner.
Hi.
Well, last time, as you remember, we went to see Double T, and she's a Westerly Seahawk 35. And I have to say, I found it a really, really lovely boat. Very, very spacious, and she sailed so well. I honestly couldn't believe how well she pointed. Sadly, Double T was beyond our budget, but we have hopes that maybe we'll find another on budget somewhere else out there. But one thing I must say is, on our walk round vid last time, I absolutely murdered my attempts at trying to pronounce the designer's name. So my apologies for that, and I've been quite rightly corrected. So I'm going to try again. It's Ed Dubois. The Westerly Seahawk had already popped up on our radar when we came across this Seahawk 34, which was for sale in Guernsey. Now, for reasons I'll come to, we never actually got to go and see the boat, and so I'd like to say a really massive thank you to Lovell Yachts Ltd for allowing me to use the pictures from their original listing. It's really appreciated. Well, this yacht was called Summer Breeze, and the immediate thing that strikes you straight away is that she's actually a bilge keel version. Although, like the Seahawk 35, the 34 does come in both the bilge keel and fin keel variant. Now, when you first look at this boat, you'd be forgiven for thinking, actually, it looks like a 35 to me. And in many ways you'd be right, because most of the dimensions of the boat, the length of the waterline, the beam, all that stuff is exactly the same as the 35. There's only one small difference, and that is that the length overall is just 34 feet, or 33.8 foot, 10.14 meters. We want to be a little bit more precise. The Seahawk 34 was originally designed to replace the Discus 33 in the Westerly lineup, and perhaps more importantly, introduced that centre cockpit arrangement. Looking at the saloon, you can see it's a very similar layout to the 35, and I have to say, looking at the woodwork etc in these pictures, she's a lovely, well cared for example. Just look at this. Again, looking at the galley, you can see it's a linear arrangement, and the general layout is exactly the same as the 35, with a few exceptions we'll come back to. One thing that really struck us about this boat, looking at the pictures, and that's the woodwork. It's so well cared for, and it really, really brings the boat to life. You'll also notice that Summer Breeze here is in mast furling on a sloop rig. Now, there's a lot of mixed feelings about that, but I'm keeping an open mind. Well, let's have a look at a few differences between the 34 and the 35. If we look a little bit more closely at Summer Breeze here, just looking at the stern, you can see it's actually quite a flat setup on the transom, whereas on Double T, the Seahawk 35, you can see it's the sugar scoop type arrangement. Of course, the difference between a bilge keel version and the fin keel version is quite an obvious one. There are also some differences in the carpentry on board as well. Looking here at the 34, you can see in the galley there's actually quite a different cupboard arrangement to that of the 35, as you see here on Double T. Double T still has the standard fit roof lining with a dreaded westerly droop. Summer Breeze, however, has had an update and now has this wonderful panelled effect instead. Really looks lovely. You might also have noticed there's a difference in the window configuration on the 34 versus the 35. You can see the 34 are a lot smaller. Summer Breeze was on the market for £26,000, and actually that was somewhere in the region of what we were thinking budget wise. But before we could even organise to go and have a look at this lovely boat, this happened. So yet another one gets away. So it's back to the drawing board, as they say, and we continue the boat hunting. Again, early in our boat shopping activities, we made the trip down to Pembrokeshire to East Lanyon to have a look at a very interesting boat. Now, unfortunately, at this stage, I have to admit that when we started our boat shopping activities, we weren't recording all the viewings that we were doing. So in this case, I'd like to say a massive thank you to Boatshed Wales, in particular the Neyland branch, for letting me use the footage from their original listing. It's really appreciated. So here we have the Westerly Discus 33. Unlike many boats of its era, one look tells you it's built like a tank. Yet another design from the pen of Lawrence Giles. It's actually one of many designs he did for the Westerly mark. As the name suggests, it's 33 foot long, or 10 metres, and just a little bit less than that on the waterline. Now, looking below the waterline, we see, yes, it's a bilge keeler with a draft of just over 5 foot. Now, take a closer look at these bilge keels. Now, think back to when we went to see the Countess up in North Wales. We talked about bilge keels then. Unlike other bilge keelers, this one is slightly different in that we can see that the keels are actually encapsulated as part of the hull. So there's actually no joint between the hull and the keel. Now that's good news because it means there's no bolts or anything like that to rot. Now the Discus 33 is the bolt-on type, but with proper maintenance it's not really a problem. At the aft end we have a partial skeg rudder, 3-blade prop, and that's pushed along by a Volvo Penta 36 horsepower. It's actually the original engine and it's got nearly 3,500 hours on it. Now that's what I call getting your money's worth, but still going strong. She's solidly built, and at nearly 7,000 kilograms or 7 tons, it truly is tough as all boots. It's no wonder at all it was one of Westerly's best-selling designs. So let's now get on board and have a closer look. Now to me it's always the fun bit. Straight away you notice that the side decks are nice and roomy, uncluttered, and there's loads of space on deck with all the lines led back to the cockpit. At just over 11 foot in beam, I think it's just a nice size to give the space and the feel. Looking at the rig, it's the standard masthead sloop with a wonderful stack and pack and lazy jack system. At the stern we've got a gantry with solar panel and wind power, and a few other toys we'll talk about in a minute. As we head forward, we can see at the bow here we've got a really chunky windlass system here, fully electronic and remote control. That'll pretty much pull up anything. You'll also notice all the stanchions have netting on, which is actually quite chunky, but it's great for safety. Heading into the cockpit, you can see it's really roomy, and this is the fly deck version, which was designed to help create the space below for the double bunk in the aft cabin. I have to say, I was really impressed with this bimini and spray hood arrangement. It's actually really quite chunky, not to mention the fact it's braced in various directions, and it has some wonderful vision from the helm as well. And speaking of helms, looking here we can see we've got a usual console arrangement, but this one has a few secrets, like CCTV that the owner put in to help him docking. We also have a great auto helm arrangement as well. I think it's time to head below and see what we find. The companionway gives way onto the engine box here, which is a wonderful step arrangement for getting down to the cabin. Actually, it's very safe. Off to the starboard side there we can see the galley, which is the usual arrangement. Cooker, sink, cool box, etc. And that opens up onto this lovely expanse of a saloon. The saloon is incredibly well laid out and very, very roomy, and you'll notice there's no compression post or anything to interfere with moving around. Complete with all the trappings of a travels, you have to say that this boat is incredibly well looked after, a true credit to a current custodian. To port from the companionway, we've got the chart table, which is well laid out, and it has this wonderful forward-facing seat. Now, there's always a debate, forward-facing or aft-facing. I'm on the fence on this one. But all the panels are nicely laid out, and everything's to hand. But what about accommodation? Well, from a sleeping point of view, you'll believe it or not, but the Discus is actually 7 berths, with 3 of them being double. Now, this was on our radar because, we've been looking for something with an aft cabin. And that's a little bit dark in here, but a bit more light on the matter, and you can see that it's offset to the starboard side. It also has this very interesting window which opens out into the cockpit. Could be handy. The Mark II version also has 2 seats within the aft cabin, whereas the Mark I only had 1. Heading forward into the fore cabin, what we have is 2 singles port and starboard with an infill. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of the Westerly saggy headlinings, but generally speaking, it's really well presented. Off to the port side of the heads, which are just about a nice size, I think, for wedging yourself in. We also have some nice features like a fairly chunky pump-out arrangement for the toilet, and of course a shower. I have to say, this boat was incredibly well presented, and she's got the pedigree. Believe it or not, the owner has just finished a circumnavigation of the UK, so it's no wonder she's been well laid out for cruising, just the way you want it. The Discus 33 was actually made famous by the Reverend Bob Shepton on Dodo's Delight, and he's been about as far north as you can go unless your name's Santa Claus. Look up his website, it's very interesting. Price-wise, we're about on par. But before we could even go home and think about it, this happened. I'm starting to see a pattern forming here. There goes another one. But nil desperandum, and the search continues. In a previous episode, we went to Milford Haven on another viewing. We're here to look at Southerly 115. So it's right behind me here, so let's go and have a closer look. Now, for our boat, we thought there was just that little bit too much work required for our budget, but I'm pleased to report that she was shortly thereafter sold, and the new owner reached out to us through the channel to share with us what he's been up to since he bought the boat. Well, he got to work straight away and actually started a lot of cosmetic work and preparing the boat for a journey to a new home. And I have to say, he's done a great job. But that's just the beginning of the adventure for this boat. And she began a truly epic trip to her new home.
Hi.
What a true adventure that was. And she's now on the Kennet and Avon Canal, where she's going to continue to be refitted before some great plans in the Med. Unfortunately, life on the canal isn't so straightforward either. Having had a narrowboat, I know that it's generally referred to as a contact sport, but steel against steel is one thing, but here we're talking steel on fiberglass, and it's damage done. They don't even look bothered about it. Personally, if this was my boat, I'd be mad as a hornet. So following the refit, there's some big plans, and we wish the new owner the very best of luck. Next time on Kipper Tales, we take a look back at another boat that came on our radar way back at the beginning of this adventure, when we take a look at a Moody 33 Mark II. And we have some very, very important news to share about our boat buying adventure. We've now reached a point where tough decisions have had to be made, and today is the day that our boat shopping ends. And that's because we bought a boat. How cool is that? But what have we bought? Join us next time and find out.